Nigerian couple Luciana Akanbi, 38 years, and husband Femi Akanbi, 51 years, both Nigerian nationals, residing in Dartford, Kent, have each been sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison for sophisticated tax fraud scheme that exploited stolen employee data from Transport for London (TfL). The case, heard at Woolwich Crown Court, was described by Judge David Miller as TfL's worst ever data breach. It involved the unlawful access of sensitive personal information belonging to over 100 TfL staff, which was then used to submit fraudulent tax rebate claims to HM Revenue and Customs. This is how the fraud was carried out. Luciana Akanbi had worked for TfL since 2017, initially in the Human Resources Department and later as a business service call advisor. In this role, she had legitimate access to the organization's internal systems and the personal records of colleagues. Between September 2021 and January 2022, she unlawfully accessed the details of 107 TfL employees, including passport numbers, national insurance numbers, and bank records. The couple, together with others, then used data from at least 40 employees to set up self-assessment accounts and file 139 fraudulent tax rebate claims. These claims total just under 649,000 British pounds. HMRC paid out over 433,000 British pounds from the public purse before the fraud was detected. The proceeds were quickly moved through a complex money laundering network using 38 different computer devices from the couple's home and elsewhere, making recovery quite difficult. Investigators traced approximately 66,000 British pounds into Femi Akanbi's bank account and 16,000 British pounds into Luciana's bank account. Again, over 50,000 of the funds went into various gambling accounts. The judge noted that the couple's actual gains were higher than the traced amount, and both were at the epicenter of the operation. Prosecutor Andrew Evans described the fraud as sophisticated in nature, requiring significant planning and involving a large number of victims. Fellow TfL colleagues faced additional checks and procedures which lowered morale and created distrust within the organization. This is the court proceedings. At sentencing on or around 15 to 16 April, Judge David Miller highlighted the serious impact. TfL, he said, suffered their worst ever data breach. It meant they had no change. They had to change their systems. It affected their morale and staff performance. He emphasized the damage to victims whose credit ratings were impacted, forcing them to deal with HMRC and rearrange their finances. The judge stated that Luciana had abused the trust placed in her as an employee, while Femi was equally culpable and had pressured her. Both were found jointly responsible for the intended and actual loss to the public purse. Mitigating factors included the couple's effort to care for their 3 children and financial pressures linked to Femi Akanbi's gambling addiction, which worsened after they contracted COVID-19 and was hospitalized during the pandemic. Luciana initially tried to deflect blame by suggesting a relative in IT might have been responsible, but the court rejected this. No compensation order was made because the couple had no means to repay the money. The judge noted they may be liable for deportation after serving their sentences, though that decision rests with immigration authorities. This is how the authorities reacted. TfL's head of counter fraud and corruption, Richard Mullins, welcomed the sentence and confirmed the organization had notified the Information Commissioner's office and introduced stronger measures to protect staff data. According to him, I quote, "We take any cases of fraud extremely serious. Hundreds of thousands of pounds was unable to be reinvested elsewhere to the wider public benefit." An HMRC spokesperson warned that the tax authority can and do act against anyone who tries to undermine the tax system, urging people to report suspected fraud. This case underscores the risk of insider threats in public sector organizations and the severe consequences of abusing access to sensitive personal data for financial gain. The fraud not only cost taxpayers over 403,000 British pounds, but also eroded trust among TfL employees and forced systemic changes to prevent reoccurrence. It's another day in the news. It's another day of Nigerians who had better opportunity, to be abroad. They are not in Nigeria, but then instead of them to do legitimate business, to do something that works, get themselves into something that will help them and meaningful, but they continue to dent the image of the country. Is an embarrassment. You are given an opportunity. You had access to the data of employees, but you decided to abuse it. You don't know what data protection is all about. You abuse data protection, using people's information to file tax rebate claims is a disgrace. Well, there was a claim of them being deported. Somehow, how I feel is better you get them deported, so they come back to Nigeria and then start lives afresh, because they cannot continue to stay there and dent the image of the country and kind of put the lives of hardworking Nigerians who are doing legal jobs, who are working, working so hard to make ends meet. You're putting their lives in danger and you're setting them up for stricter, severe scrutiny. This is embarrassing.